Last season, the Boston Celtics finished with a 48-24 record, which was pretty good, especially since they were coming off being one of the most disappointing teams in the league. They finished with the third seed and nearly made it all the way to the NBA Finals, where they lost to the Miami Heat in 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals, which was a winnable series, as they could have easily have won that series, since I believe in like 2 or 3 of the games they blew significant leads. And in this year's offseason, they lost Gordon Hayward to Charlotte, and they also signed Tristan Thompson and Jeff Teague. So in today's video, I'll be talking about how good I think Boston can be next year, as well as their offseason. Please drop a like on this video to help my channel grow, subscribe to help me reach my goal of 500 subscribers before the end of 2020, and comment on this video to start a conversation with me, and play that intro. I think the Celtics were one of the more low-key teams this offseason. Their biggest move of this offseason wasn't someone being added to their team, it was actually someone leaving. And the player who left for them is Gordon Hayward, who went to the Charlotte Hornets. And for some reason, a lot of Boston fans and just NBA fans in general believe the Celtics losing Hayward isn't a big deal, and some actually view it as a positive. And I really disagree, since Hayward was a very efficient 17 points per game player, and he averaged 17.5 points, 6.7 rebounds, and 4.1 assists on 50% from the field. And he put up all these good numbers as a fourth option behind Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kemba Walker. Hayward was a great scorer and was capable of scoring 20 plus points on any given night. Hayward was a really good 3-point shooter, and he was capable of creating his own shot. And he also was Boston's second best passer. Although Hayward was injured most of the playoffs, and when he returned he wasn't that good, I still think he was important to Boston, and I think if he never got injured, Boston could have made it to the finals. And in no way am I saying that Boston should have re-signed Hayward to a max contract, but I think without him, they will be a worse team. Boston also wasn't a deep team to begin with, and they depended a lot on their starters, and losing their fourth best player cannot be good. Boston also signed Tristan Thompson to a 2-year, $19 million deal. And I think this is a solid move, because last year's Boston's biggest weakness was their size and how weak they are at starting center. And adding Tristan is a slight improvement over Tice, because he is a significantly better finisher, rebounder, and defender. Tice also fits better as a backup big rather than a starter. So this move was sneakily good, and it sneakily improves their depth. Boston also signed Jeff Teague to a 1-year, $2 million deal. And although he was signed as a backup, he might be forced to start at the beginning of the season, because Kemba is supposed to miss the first few weeks of the season. And although Teague hasn't been that good the last few seasons, I believe if Teague is on a good team, he will be more motivated to be better, and I think he could be an okay starter and a good backup point guard. Teague is an improvement over Brad Wanamaker, that's for sure, and he brings depth. So overall, I think Boston took a small L this offseason, because them losing their fourth best player for basically nothing can't be a good thing. They also got more depth, which was arguably their biggest problem last season, so I think Boston got slightly worse this offseason. But there's a chance that they stay the same or even slightly improve. Jason Tatum could potentially take another leap next season and be a dark horse candidate for the MVP. Because last season, he started off slow, averaging an inefficient 20 points, but in the last 2 or 3 months before the bubble, he took a huge leap, averaging nearly 30 points on crazy efficiency, and in this stretch, he played like one of the top 10 players in the league. And when Boston was in the playoffs, he was closer to what he was at the end of the season than at the beginning. So I think next season he will be an efficient 25 to 27 points per game scorer, and a player who can be that good on offense, combined with being one of the best wing defenders in the league, might just be a top 10 player. Jason was also signed to a 5-year max contract this season, and I believe this was a good move, since Tatum is already a top 15 to 10 player at the age of 22, and signing him shows that you trust him and might be important for signing future contracts. And it's also a good move for Tatum since Boston is a really good team and he's secure in the bag. Jaylen Brown last year took a huge leap, and he was an all-star level player. He was an efficient 20 points per game scorer who wasn't ball dominant, and skills-wise, he might have arguably been one of the most improved because his handle and shot creating ability improved a lot. Jason was also one of the best perimeter defenders in the league that season, and when Boston signed him to a 4-year $80 million deal in the 2019 offseason, many people were saying how bad of a move it was, but looking back at it now, that's an amazing deal, and Brown is worth way more now. Brown can maybe improve next year and be a 23 points per game scorer and possibly make his first All-Star season. Last season was arguably Kemba Walker's worst season in the last 5 years because in the regular season, he averaged 20 points per game on not good efficiency, shooting 42% from the field, but the biggest problem with Kemba was how bad he was in the playoffs. And when you look at his playoffs overall, he averaged 19 points on 44% from the field shooting, which doesn't seem that bad, but in key series and games, he came extra small, like in Game 6 versus the Raptors in the Eastern Conference semifinals. When the Celtics were leading 3-2, Kemba came up super small, only scoring 5 points on 2 of 11 shooting. And overall in that series, he averaged 17 points and shot 27% from 3. And I know it doesn't matter since they won, but it just shows he's not as reliable in the playoffs. Another example was in the conference finals where Boston faced the Heat, and in Game 1 he put up 19 points on 31% shooting, and if he played good in that game, they likely could have won that game, which could have changed the course of the series. Kemba also will be missing the first few weeks of the season, and him being injured might be a legit risk going forward. Boston still has Marcus Smart, who I expect to be the same player, who is one of the best defenders in the league and a great role player, who I think in Boston's playoff run was arguably their third best player because of his defense and the many games of him saving Boston, like how he hit 4 or 5 random threes in a quarter in Game 2 against Toronto, which was a big reason why they won that game, or one in Game 7 versus Toronto where he blocked Norman Powell when there was like a minute left and it was super close. If we compare Boston to teams in the East, I think first off they're way better than teams like Indiana and Philadelphia and are in the tier of teams like Miami, Toronto, Milwaukee, and Brooklyn. And I think Boston is better than Toronto simply because they beat them last season in the playoffs and now their depth is slightly better than before, whereas the Raptors got a slightly worse. But there's not a huge gap between the two teams. I think Miami is still slightly better than them since they did defeat them last year, and I can see some of the younger players improving, like Hero, Bam, or maybe even Kendrick Nunn, and I don't think Boston's depth closes the gap. I think the Bucks are better than the Celtics by kind of a huge margin because their best player is way better than the Celtics' best player. Milwaukee also has better depth and got Jrue Holiday this offseason. I think Boston could maybe be better than the Nets because the Nets have a lot of questions, from how good will KD be when he returns, will there be good chemistry, and how focused Kyrie will be. So I would give the slight edge to Boston as of right now, but I think Boston will finish with the 4th seed because I expect Kemba missing weeks to negatively affect them. I don't see Boston making the finals, but they will be a good team. Anyways guys, that's it for the video. Let me know where you think Boston will finish in the East and how good they'll be. Please like this video to show support. Subscribe to my channel to help me reach 500 subscribers before the end of 2020. And comment on this video to start a conversation with me. Also check these 2 videos up above if you like this one. And I'm out.